Good evening, horror fans, and welcome to the Southern Nightmares Reading Series, sponsored by the Atlanta Chapter of the Horror Writers Association. Each month, we spotlight Atlanta Chapter members and HWA members from around the world. But we're not alone in hosting events like this one. We want to give a shout out to the Skeleton Hour, a monthly online panel discussion hosted by the HWA. The most recent Skeleton Hour featured the team who brought us Sycorax's Daughters, a 2018 HWA Bram Stoker Award finalist. For more horror, check out the HWA New York chapter hosting their Galactic Nightmares on the second Thursday of every month. Please let us know if you know about more upcoming readings so we can boost the signal and support our community. I'm Crystal O'Leary Davidson, an Atlanta chapter member, writer, horror scholar, professor at Middle Georgia State University, and co-editor of the 2018 book of essays, Monsters of Film, Fiction, and Fable. And I'm pleased to be working with Peter Solomon, Kitty Sarkozy, Jessica Ann York, Alex Holflick to bring you this event tonight. Tonight, we're spotlighting just a few of the amazing women that we have in the HWA and the horror community. February is Women in Horror Month. Women in Horror Month is an international grassroots initiative which encourages supporters to learn more about women who work in the horror field and to help promote their work in the horror industry. Whether they're on screen or they're behind the scenes, writing fiction, researching scholarship, creating art or music, or contributing in other ways, it's clear that women significantly contribute to the horror genre. To learn more about these events this month and around the year, check out the site womeninhorrormonth.com. This month, the Atlanta chapter of the Horror Writers Association, we are focusing on some pretty amazing women that are in our chapter and in the HWA. Every month, we feature a Nightmare of the Month, a publication or work by one of our chapter members. This February's Nightmare of the Month is the novel Blood Redemption by one of this evening's guests, Nora Breedlove. Nora Breedlove was raised on fairy tales and folklore, which instilled in her at an early age the love of all things dark and peculiar. A self-proclaimed recluse who doesn't enjoy talking about herself, so she says, it's no surprise that she's a terrible marketer. Otherwise, she would probably plug her debut horror novel, Blood Redemption, here. Well, we've got you, Nova. She lives near Athens, Georgia, in a 170-year-old antebellum home haunted by faulty plumbing, dated wiring, and lots of dust. Nova's novel, Blood Redemption, follows a small-town Georgia sheriff as he searches for some missing children. So we have with us tonight, Nova. Hi,
Hello,
Nova.
Hi, can you see me and hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Welcome.
Thank you for that lovely introduction. And I do hate talking about myself, so I hope I don't screw this up too terribly. I'm honored to be here.
This.
I'm so honored to be here with all these lovely, wonderful, talented women. And I guess I'm going to be doing a reading for you. Blood Redemption, it takes place in the fictional town of Rayburn, Georgia. It's near Blood Mountain, which is actually a real place. And like many places in Georgia, it has a very haunted, dark past. And this is the reason many of the residents think that the children have gone missing. There's 5 children that have gone missing, and it's sort of, they're thinking it's a haunted issue. The sheriff believes it's a child killer known as the Redeemer who's taken the children. So the piece I'm going to read for you is, it's actually in the prologue, which I don't use the word prologue because people are such prologue haters. Dear God.
I know. Yeah.
So I used the word before, and I'm going to take a section from there. And this is the Redeemer's very first abduction many years ago. And the boy is kept prisoner in Rayburn's Haunted Hollow, along with a young woman named Sarah and her infant child. All are integral to the story as it moves along. So I'm going to read this for you, and I'll make this quick and painless as possible.
Okay, thank you, Nova. Appreciate it.
Tired and broken and small, the boy lacked the courage to confront the man who'd stolen him from his family so long ago that he had to carve his name into his own arm to remember it. He looked down at his hand, at the gap where his finger should have been, and shook in fear. He'd lived when he should have died. The man said there was a reason, and the boy wondered even then what it might be. He desperately wanted to follow him out of the hollow, find a way back to his family, but the boy was torn. The baby girl was still inside the burning trailer. He looked back and forth between the fire and his freedom for a minute, which seemed much longer than it was. A train whistled in the distance, and the man disappeared into the trees. Behind him, the wind stirred a cloud of red clay dust so thick it made the world appear out of focus and apocalyptic through the boy's eyes. He thought again of his baby sister, then of the infant girl still inside the trailer. Her cries, sharp and penetrating, pierced his heart. The memory of Sarah rocking the child to sleep the night before instilled an ache in him that he didn't know any longer existed. His own mother came to him on rare occasion in unexpected moments, a flash of light in the blackest part of his dreams. The boy wished now he could have thanked Sarah for one more time for her kindness. He wondered why she never once tried to escape. She'd been his only friend, now she was gone and he was to blame. He shouldn't have taken the box. That's what the man had been yelling about. He wanted the contents of that old cardboard shoebox Sarah had hidden under the bed, the one she asked the boy to burn. He had rifled through it, hoping to discover something of value inside, an explanation of why bad shit happened, or a map leading him out of the hollow, or maybe, just maybe, the jar that contained his voice. But inside there was nothing but 3 tattered folders, the color of old butter, each labeled with a different name. He'd started the fire with the intention of tossing the files in it, but changed his mind at the last minute and hid the box instead. He wanted the man to know what it felt like to want something he couldn't have. It was wrong, but it was too late to make it right. At 13, the boy had already learned that revenge could be just as bitter as it was sweet. Sarah was dead because of him. Nothing could change that. He had no one now, and neither did the child. There was no other way. He had to save that baby. For Sarah. He'd do it for Sarah. Muted light filtered through the tall trees. The boy looked toward the sky and drew in a breath so deep it burned his insides and filled his mouth with ash. The hollow was haunted by the scent of charred wood, wet and moldy and lingering like a lost soul. He could feel it coating his throat the way he imagined soot collecting in a chimney. A heavy dampness pressed against him, and the boy, both young and old at the same time, felt the weight of it in his chest. Lightning danced around him, and he remembered just then that he had once been afraid of storms. He welcomed that fear now because it was so simple, so innocent that it almost seemed laughable. He closed his eyes, held out his tongue, and caught the first few drops of rain on the tip of it. Perched on a branch above him, a crow, shiny and black as oil, cawed. It shook its wings erratically, then became a shadow, leaving in its departure a single black feather that floated down past the boy's face. The air was dense with pine. It caught in his lungs and hardened like sap, stilling him only once as he darted for smoke and flame. It was a decision made more of instinct than courage. He was her only chance, or so he thought. Just before he reached the trailer, the door burst open and the woman from the hollow, the one with all the turquoise jewelry, jumped from the burning tin box, the tiny child clutched in her arms. The infant wailed in pain while the woman rolled with her in the grass, smothering the flames. Then she began whispering near the girl's ear, a sibilant whisper, soft and secret and full of gospel. It reminded him of wind blowing through the trees just before a storm. It quieted the infant's screams, and her bloodied and blistered skin began to heal before the boy's eyes. There was no time to question how. He had once watched this woman bring a near-dead deer back to life by healing the wound that almost severed its leg. The woman motioned him toward her, and he dropped to his knees as if in prayer. It wasn't the first time he wondered if God only answered the prayers of those who could speak. The burns blanketing the woman's body were so deep that some of them opened right to the bone. The smell was unbearable. Once infection set in, she was sure to die. She looked near death now. He leaned in. She handed him the child. He noticed on the inside of the girl's forearm a birthmark not much bigger than a quarter. An angel, he decided, before being distracted by the woman pulling him down so that her face was seconds from his, her breath hot and fermented, like fruit that had soured in the sun. She spoke delicately, words as faint and broken as a distant horizon. Though the two had crossed paths in the woods, the woman had never actually said a word to him. Until now, they shared a peaceful pact, a mutual but silent agreement grounded only in eye contact. It took him a minute to understand what she was saying. Her directions out of the hollow were as hazy as the air around him, but would lead him to the doctor's secret door. The entrance to the tunnel was on a ledge that overlooked the river. She carved a circle with a cross in the middle of it into the clay. Look for the star. The immortals will guide you, she told him. Don't fear them. She spoke words he didn't understand, then pointed toward the dense fog that began to glow and flicker with tiny lights. The boy nodded and swallowed hard, trying to remember at that moment what it was like to speak, to have a voice, to say aloud a prayer that had a chance of being answered. It had been so long since he'd used his vocal cords, he doubted they even worked, though he could still taste the echo of his lost pleas for help rolling across his dry tongue like thunder over a desert. But nobody ever came, and now here he was in this place of burning sorrow with nothing but feral fear in the child. Strapping her arms across her chest, the woman began to rock slowly back and forth, the rhythm of the raindrops becoming heavier and faster with each passing second. Her eyes disappeared behind her lids, and once again she started to whisper that strange prayer, only it was louder and more haunting this time. It frightened the boy into quickness, a panic that pushed him toward the forest of trees where he hoped for but did not find quiet. Instead, the woman's fervent hissing, a riverside tent of revival snakes, chased into the mountain, the rain pounding, the infant pulled tightly to his chest.
Wow, Nova, that was fantastic.
Thank you.
You're so lyrical. I mean, I love your use of language. A whisper full of gospel. Oh, that's great.
That means a lot coming from you, my dear.
Well,
so thank you.
You said something before you started your reading. You said that Blood Mountain is part of the Appalachian Mountain. Is it? It's a real place and has this dark history.
It does, and it does run up. Blood Mountain is actually, it was inhabited by the Cherokees, and they were forced from it. Thank you, President Jackson, you asshole. Am I allowed to say asshole from here?
Yes.
Yes. Oh, good, yay, swearing. So they were forced from it, and I took it from that. I like to do a lot of history. I add a lot of history into what I write. I'm trying to master the short story, but I'm not very good at short stories, but I try. I have a few, but I'm better at novels because I can blah, 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 and I can, divulge history. And so this story was actually based partly on the Sauter children, that they were from Fayetteville, West Virginia, and they disappeared. There were 10 of them, but 5 of them disappeared in 1945. It was on Christmas, and these children were never found. And I read the story and I thought, the house caught on fire that they lived in, and the children were not in the house, there were no bones. And so I read this story and it stayed with me for years, Crystal. Like, you know how that works. The story sticks with you. And then I started reading about Dr. Hicks, the doctor who was in northern Georgia in McKaysville, I think it was. And he was this abortion sort of doctor, illegal abortions and illegal adopting. And I put the two stories together, and I'm like, I'm gonna make something out of this. And so that's where it came from. I picked it out of a hat and I said, these two things are gonna go together somehow. And so that's where it came from. But I love history, and so I also love Gothic literature. So I am a fan of yours.
Well, I was gonna ask you about mixing genres, because when I first saw your book and I read the premise, it reads like a crime book, but it's just your use of language. And then you said, you love the gospel and the setting. It's kind of a Gothic, it's a horror. Where do you see genre in your work?
This is the problem. And so I did self-publish it. I did send it only to 10 of my favorite places. And they all said, the writing is great, but where does this fit in? And I really feel this is like lit horror. That's not a true genre, I know, but I think it's, I feel like it's lit horror. I love the horror genre, but I also love mysteries. But every mystery publisher that I sent this to said, this is more horror. And so I thought maybe I'm a horror writer and I didn't know it. So, wow. But I'm a fan of both mystery and horror. So I don't do any romance whatsoever. There is a little in this book because I think you need a little bit, there's always some romance, but there's none of those.
Horror lit.
Yes, yeah.
We've got to start that genre, because I think that's something interesting. There's a lot of women who love to mix genre. So this is exciting. I love your work.
Thank you so very much. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight, Nova. Appreciate it. And everybody, Nova's book, that is our Nightmare of the Month. So Blood Redemption, buy it, read it, so we can keep talking about it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Up next, we have with us Jessica Nettles. Jessica decided to be a writer at 12 years old, and knowing that this choice would take her on a lifelong, amazing journey to find her voice and learn her craft. Well, she didn't know it at the time, but then as she said, when you're a kid, you don't know much. Jessica has since written many short stories, some of which you can find on the internet if you're strong in the way of Google Few. Her first novel, Children of Menlo Park, will be released in 2021 by Falstaff Books, and her second novel, Kudzu Ridge, will be finished then as well, she hopes, and we've got your back on that. Jessica has two wonderful adult children who share her love for the fantastic and for D&D. She also has two cats. They're black cats who would be very, very happy if she finally got that first novel published, because that means more food for them. Jessica has a BA in English and an MA in professional writing from Kennesaw State University. She's on the board of the Broadleaf Writers Association, and she serves as the volunteer coordinator for the association's annual writing conference. When she's not writing, knitting, or playing D&D, she teaches English composition like a boss at a local technical college. So, hi, Jess. Thanks for coming with us. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good. So I have to nerd out with you, Jessica, before you get to your reading. As a longtime D&D player myself, I'm just dying to know, what do you like most about tabletop storytelling, RPGs, old school, and does this kind of interactive storytelling actually inform any of your writing process at all?
I think what I like about it the most is the relationship building. If it's done right, you not only have a great story going on, but you have these characters that begin to have relationships. And, you know, whether they're romantic or deep friendships or something that just keeps growing. And I think it does inform, because I got a real taste early on of fictional characters connecting and becoming a community. And community informs me a lot. Whether we're talking about a cast of characters in a novel, a cast of characters in a story, or, you know, people playing across the table from one another. And so, like with my novel, I have a cast of many. In fact, I had to cut some of my cast. I went a little crazy. So yeah, I think it does inform. I think it definitely taught me a lot about, you know, how do characters talk? How do characters interact in especially intense situations? I think that can really make a difference. Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope I answered that question.
No, I think that's really interesting. And, you know, in your answer, you also mentioned about like novels and short stories. I know that you've written a lot of short stories.
Yeah.
And you're a great short story writer. And I was just wondering, you know, you got your first novel coming out soon. Yeah. How is that a different process for you? Or was it, from writing a short story or series of short stories to diving into the world of a novel?
It's the difference between a snapshot and a full-blown movie. Wow. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like with the short story, you've got a limited cast, which means you've also got a limited set, if you will. They're not going to move all over the country in a short story, unless it's just a really big short story, and then it's a novella. With a short story, usually you have one main scene that's going on. Okay. And you're kind of focusing in that one small space. So I almost look at it like, because I used to write plays too, I almost look at it as almost writing like a one act. You've got this little tiny arc that's going on. With a novel, you can have several arcs going on, while there's this massive arc going on too.
Right.
And so the process is, I mean, whether I'm writing a short story or a chapter in a novel, I'm still sitting my butt down and writing. So the words are still going to come. It's just that you got to look at a larger picture when you're writing the novel, and you've got to sustain it. That was the thing that I was most scared about with this novel, was that I was going to get, 40, 50,000 words in and have nothing else to say, and the story wouldn't be finished. Which is probably why I wrote really big at first. A lot of folks were like, how in the heck did you write so large at first? It's like, because I was afraid of stopping.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, you're one of my aspirational idols for just work ethic. I mean, your butt's in that seat every morning at like 4 o'clock in the morning, 4:30. So I admire your work ethic. So
Well,
I'm excited to read your novel when it comes out.
I hope it's as good as I think it is. I just got through with my last developmental edit this weekend, and I got through it and I went, I really wrote a really darn good novel. Holy crap. and I'm terrified that everybody else is going to read it and not see that it's nearly as good as I think it is.
I
But
bet it's going to be great.
I think if anything, it's going to be a rollicking good time.
Good. Well, let's shift gears a little bit. You are bringing us something to read tonight. Can you set up for us what you're reading?
Okay, so I'm reading a short story. Crystal, you've already read a version of it. I read your notes and I've updated accordingly.
Oh, good.
One of the goals that I have, or a quiet goal that I've had for a while, is to write a series of short stories that are more or less an homage to each one of the more famous universal monster creatures. And
that's amazing.
I've done a flash fiction using the 1932 James Whale Frankenstein creature as the central figure. And tonight, well, I'm going to read the story, and you guys can figure out which creature this is.
Fantastic.
He's not quite the same as you see him on the film. I took him a different direction. So I guess next is Dracula. I'm terrified to take him on because he's so iconic. And so many people have done Dracula, and I have managed to write about a vampire. You've read about that too. You've read that, I think. No, you haven't read that.
I'm excited.
Oh my goodness. Yay. Okay, so I have something to
so I'm excited about your story. So
got the werewolf, and I don't know what I'm going to do with either of them yet, but we'll see. It comes.
Well, I'm looking forward to it.
All right.
Well, I'm going to turn over to you then, Jess, and take it away.
All right. This is called The Time Has Finally Come. The spines that go from the back of my neck rose up as I sat upon a rock formation above my lagoon. Soft golden light filtered through sharp scented fronds of towering plant life that cut my temporary home off from the larger waterway. This was replaced by planets and stars I once knew, as well as my own family. I knew there was a chance, a real chance, this was the time. The voices from my past and possibly my future echoed in my mind in a language I'd not uttered in almost 8 Mecham. Perhaps after such a long wait, the time had come to leave this world for my own. My first encounter with the Pinkskins happened after I crashed near a part of the lake near a wretched structure that stood out against the waves only because of the glow of the giant blue piscine that floated above it. The stench of fish cooked in mammal fat hung heavy in the air, while I gagged at the shoreline, puking what little was in my stomach onto the straw-like leaves of the massive trees that surrounded the structure. The creatures stole my ship. I hid myself behind an uprising of rock and red earth until they were gone, not trusting the tone of their indistinguishable conversation. I lowered myself into the unknown waters and swam until there were no lights, no stench, and no pinkskins. From across the lake, a too familiar growl brought me back. A green water vehicle entered my waters, kicking up waves in its wake. This happened more and more as of late. I got down from the rock and slid into the water. I kept my eyes above the surface. On the vehicle was a heavier pink skin with a square jaw, while the second was soft and curved. Square jaw touched a lever and the wake slowed. Soft one gazed around with wide eyes and removed a bright colored covering from herself. Underneath was a single piece of white cloth that covered all but her arms and legs, which were bare. They both moved slow, as though they were scared. Perhaps they'd seen me. I lowered myself into my lagoon and dropped below the surface. Near one side of the boat, a hook just sat beneath the bottom of the boat, dangling an insect that was still half living. I considered reaching up and yanking it. That always made the pink ones jump around like hatchlings. Then the soft one entered my domain and splashed and flailed like a youngling. This must be a female. I hung in the water, and the female churned past me once more. Before I could stop myself, my clawed hand grazed her lower limb. White covering and pink skin stained red as she arched to the surface and screamed enough to pierce into the dark below. Squarejaw reached for her and pulled her into their floating craft. I saw a flash of metal and a boom rattled around me. I swam back to the rocks and stayed beneath the surface. A growl came from behind their vehicle as it turned hard to exit my domain. I rose enough to watch as Squarejaw gazed into the depths to take a glimpse of the female's assailant. Once I couldn't feel the vibration in the water, I climbed onto my rock once more and slept in the warmth of the late day sun. A wind wailed from the other side of my lagoon and whipped around my scaled body, and I woke up. Oh, I skipped. Oh, crap. Okay. It smelled of something that tickled at the back of my memory. The moon fell from the sky and grew larger and bathed me in a light that was no longer silver. The spines along my back stood at attention. They vibrated in rhythm to the low tune that played at the edge of my hearing. My mind danced with images of others with my face, with my claws. I saw blue, pure blue and green depths filled with all sorts of creatures to consume. They remembered me. The time had finally come, and I stepped forward into the light that would take me to my past, my future, my home.
Ooh, the Gill Man, one of my favorite monsters.
Mine too.
I
always
just
wanted
finished
a happy ending
reading.
for him. I'm sorry.
I know. I just finished reading Mallory O'Meara's book, Lady from the Black Lagoon, about Millicent Patrick. So it's so fitting that you had the story tonight. The Gilman's been on my mind. And of course, with Women in Horror, Millicent Patrick's, O'Meara kind of rediscovers her as the creature's creator that had been suppressed for so many years. So, wow. I love what you're doing with the story. So, setting, where does it take place?
It actually takes place at Lake Altoona, which is just north of where I live. It's between here and Woodstock and Canton. And the place with the blue Piscine light is actually a place that's no longer there. When I was a child, there is a place along Bells-Ferry Road, and I don't know if you're familiar with this area, but there's a place there's a road that goes across a major part of the lake, and it goes across the lake and up a hill, and then it takes this really sharp curve. And in the hook of that curve used to sit this, it was basically a shack. It was pretty sad, but it had this great big neon blue catfish, and it was called the Blue Cat.
Wow.
And you drive by there and you'd smell the fish frying. And so I'm like, I was thinking about that today, and I was thinking about your note about putting it someplace familiar. And I'm like, oh, I could use the Blue Cat, and then I could make him sick, because that would make him sick. Cooked fish would make him sick. So I was playing
That's
around with that
fantastic.
idea. So he's somewhere on one of the little nooks and crannies on Lake Altoona.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love that you took him from the Amazon and you put him right in Georgia. That's fantastic.
Appropriate.
Of course, yes. Well, Jess, thank you so much. We're looking forward to your novel coming out. It's coming out in 2021 from Falstaff Press. That's The Children of Menlo Park. And do you know about approximately when in 2021 we can look forward to
We
it?
are, if I get things done this weekend, I've got the author's note, I've got a book list that I'm doing, and acknowledgments. And then I send it back to John, and then we go through copy edits, which I hope won't take long. I hope my grammar is not terrible. But once we go through copy edits, that's going to be the last step. So I'm thinking somewhere between, I'm guesstimating somewhere between the end of April and maybe the 1st of June at the latest.
Oh, wow. That's great beach reading.
I'm like
Yeah.
so excited. It's been, I was looking at stuff today. It's been almost exactly 4 years since I started the novel. I sat down my butt and wrote that first 1,500 words.
Well, that's fantastic. Wow.
It's been such a journey. And yeah, I just love the learning curve. I just hope the next
Yeah.
novel works as well, you know.
Well, thank you so much for being with us this evening. We're looking forward to your book coming out, and just happy writing.
Well, thank you. And thank you for having me tonight.
So, out from behind the camera this month, we have with us Kitty Sarkozy. Normally, Kitty supports the technical side of this event, but she has a new story out in an anthology, The Future Fire, and we enticed her out from behind the camera to read for us tonight. Kitty Sarkozy is a speculative fiction writer. She is an actor, and she's a robot girlfriend. She is the associate editor of Pseudopod, an alumnus of Superstars Writing Seminar, and a member of David Farland's Apex Writers Group. Several large cats allow her to live with them in Marietta, Georgia, and she enjoys tending the intensive gardens where she hides all her bodies. So, yeah, hiding those bodies, Kitty. Welcome.
Hi.
You have a number of stories that you've read for several of the Escape Artist podcast. Can you just talk a little bit about what narration has impacted in you the most?
I love narration. I mean, I love reading. I love being an associate editor over at Pseudopod. But there's just something so fun about reading a story that somebody else wrote and then getting to put a little bit of yourself into it before it goes out there to the market at large. It's a really fun thing, and it's a really fun way to like stretch yourself, I guess, creatively. And also just super exciting whenever like one of my favorite podcasts, I'm listening to it because I listen to it like while I'm cleaning or while I'm, driving. I'm not really looking at it. And then all of a sudden I'll hear my voice and I'll be like, that's me. So that's exciting. I love narrations and I would like to do more. Right now I only read for Escape Artists, but I would do others if it, happened. So.
But you're a performer. You're not just a narrator. You're also an actor and you're a writer. So do you see this as separate, acting and writing, or do they inform each other in some way for you? Or are you just this gifted jack of all trades?
I don't know. Like reading fiction definitely goes along with the writing. Like all of those things kind of go together. But when I'm on set, that feels more like a regular job. That feels kind of how working at a coffee shop would feel. So yeah, it depends on what the part is. Like sometimes if it's a part that has like a horror aspect, like for example, whenever I was doing The Outsider, Stephen King's The Outsider, about a year ago, a little over a year ago, I hadn't read the book yet. And so you're on set for 12, 14 hours a night. So I'd put, because I have kind of curly long hair, I put earbuds in. And while I was on set for The Outsider, I was actually listening to the audiobook for The Outsider as I was filming it. And that's super fun to me. I don't know why. I was just like, I'm in this. So it's great.
Very postmodern. Yeah.
Right. Should have turned off all my like sounds on my computer because every time somebody says something, it's binging over here. So sorry.
That's okay. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about this new anthology that you're in and set up for us what you're reading tonight? Are you reading something from the anthology, your piece?
Yeah, I am. I'm reading from the anthology. I'm reading, here's the book. It's Hold Your Fire. It's from Wordfire Press, which is like Kevin Anderson's imprint, I guess. I mean, there are lots of other writers there, but he started it. And he does one of these every year. I have a couple of the others around here somewhere. Oh, here's the first one. I don't know where any of the others are. Here's the Purple Unicorn one. That's the first one he did years ago. And there's a scholarship fund for this seminar, the Don Hodge Memorial Scholarship. And so you don't get paid to write and published in here, but all the money from the sale of this book goes to the scholarship fund so the people who want to can go to the Superstars writing events. So I really like that. I thought that was really nice. And as far as the story goes, I don't want to say it's autobiographical because, you know, of the gag order and everything.
Okay.
Just fucking with you.
Right.
The character's kind of based a little bit on myself and how I would respond in a certain circumstance or how I feel people maybe should respond more. It's based on the concept of the Manic Pixie Dream Girl, who in so many movies and stories, she shows up, she fixes the broken dude, and then she dies or she disappears. She just goes away, like she gets brain cancer or she has a cardiac event or she kills herself. Why? Why does the dream girl have to do that? Why couldn't she be something else? And so that's what my story is about. As for reading it, it doesn't really get scary, at least in my opinion, until the very end. And I didn't want to read the very ending, so I'm just going to start from the beginning. And if you like it, read more. Like if you like it, buy the book. I don't know. So, okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Yay, so exciting. Dream Girl by me. I saw you for the first time in my favorite coffee shop. You looked so sad with your rumpled hair and equally rumpled suit. It looked as if your body was trying to slither out, but couldn't find an exit from the hot, itchy wool, or whatever suits are made of. You looked tired and stressed. I thought about talking to you right away, but I was learning to knit that day. Orange and pink fuzzy yarn tangled around my fingers, soft butterfly leg fibers caressing my skin. Sadly, the bamboo needles were silent. I'd hoped they would click with each stitch. Maybe the clicking was something you developed over time. If so, I would totally get it. I was concentrating on my knitting, trying to grow a super funky scarf from the single line the sweet old lady in the knitting shop had cast on for me. I wasn't unhappy that day. Maybe I was a little lonely, the way you get when you sit alone in a cafe watching all the sad people with their sad lives, all of them pretending to not be alone by traveling in pairs, holding hands, or talking excitedly into expensive phones. The Smiths was playing in my earbuds. They always make me feel better. Their songs are dark yet catchy, perky and alive. They remind me that no matter how bad things get, you can always smile and dance. You were talking on your phone when you came in, but you didn't have a happy phone face on like the three people who came in before you. Your face was real sad, real disappointed. I don't know what you were talking about. I tried to read your lips, but I don't actually know how to read lips. I should learn. That would be awesome. You sat at the table in the corner and ordered several refills of coffee, which can't have helped with your stress levels. You had a laptop that against all reason made you even more stressed looking. You ran your fingers through your hair over and over again. No wonder you had such a rumpled teddy bear look. I feared you might start pulling it all out. I had totally decided to come talk to you as soon as I finished the row I was on when you abruptly slammed down the screen on your laptop and stormed out. That's when I knew how badly you needed my help. I gathered up my knitting as fast as I could, but balls of yarn are wiggly. By the time I got outside, you were gone. I ran around the building, hoping to see you, but I guess you drove? I don't drive, so I sometimes forget that other people do. I was sad for a while. I cried a bit, sitting alone on the cold metal seats outside the coffee shop, shivering because I had left my coat inside. You needed a kind word or a smile. I let you down. I had been selfish and not listened to the call of fate. I vowed that day to follow the signposts of the universe and be true to what I knew was right. You can't imagine how happy I was when the cosmic spirit of the universe said, "You have work to do," and brought you back to me less than a week later. I was at the park on Tuesday. I think I was listening to Regina Spektor. She's just awesome, right? I was singing along, but it was okay because it was early before the kids have recess, so I had the swings all to myself. I love swings. I close my eyes. It's like flying. My whole body tingles with the falls and soars with each rise. I close my eyes, and I'm a dragon or a seagull. Thankfully, I didn't have my eyes closed. I didn't have my eyes closed when you walked past, your gaze on the ground, shoulders slumped. I leapt into action right away, which was great because the swing is the perfect height for it. I followed you for a few blocks, putting the Smiths playlist on Spotify, obviously. I was dancing a little, to look casual, like I wasn't following you. I was just a regular girl walking around. You went into a FedEx. I sort of hung around outside near some bushes that smelled like Fruit Loops. When I saw you at the register, I got into position a few yards away. Then I walked quickly back towards the doors. The universe timed it all perfectly. I bumped into you as you came out, causing you to drop your papers. "Damn it," you growled. "Oh God, I'm so sorry. Let me help you," I said hurriedly, picking up the papers. It was so weird. As you looked at me and our eyes met for the first time, the song changed. Right as I was thinking about how tired you looked, I realized what song it was. As I picked up papers, half of them resumes on linen paper and half of them wanted roommate flyers, I figured out what you needed from me. Maybe it was later than I knew for sure, but the idea entered my head then. Even if I didn't realize it consciously at the time, "Asleep" is our song, chosen for us by destiny. You were mad at me about the papers, but you were madder at life. I offered to buy you a coffee. You looked at me and said, "Sure."
Oh, what a tease. I want to hear the end of this story.
Yeah, sorry it's not actually scary. I mean, I guess it could be. I mean, people do get scared when I follow them around and hide in bushes. Sometimes. So, yeah.
Well, Kitty, what are you working on right now? What can we look forward to you doing next?
No, I have no idea. I suppose in theory. I'm working on a Southern Gothic piece, possibly, maybe.
Cool.
And I have I have two collections that I theoretically will finish someday that are essay pieces and then fiction pieces that go together. And that's actually kind of where this started. It's because it's a little autobiographical, and so I wrote about what it's like to be a dream girl, and then I wrote, a story about that over there. So,
well, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind is one of my all-time favorite movies, and
awesome.
To me, that's one of those like good Manic Pixie Dream Girls.
Yeah, totally. I kind of like Harold and Maude for like the Pixie Dream Girl. I mean, granted, the ending, but that one was just beautiful too. Some of them are very good stories, where the Pixie Dream Girl is interesting.
Yeah. Well, I definitely am going to pick up the story and pick up the anthology and read the ending because, yeah, you definitely got me with that. I wonder what's going to happen next.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Kitty. And thank you so much you offer such wonderful technical support for our group every every month. And so it's wonderful to see you on this side of the camera.
Yay, thanks for having me. Bye.
Yay. Well, we have next with us, we were going to have Can Wiggins. Can, are you with us? We had some technical difficulties earlier. So is she able to join us? Are we going to have to wait until next month for Can? Okay. Well, I know Can's an amazing short story writer, and I wish that she could join us. Like I said, we were having some technical difficulties earlier, so we will just have to look forward to having Can next month with us. If let's see. Okay. So next we have with us a very, very special treat. Part of our privilege as a chapter is being able to access this network of like-minded people. And with the Southern Nightmare Reading Series, it's important to our chapter to promote writers that are really outside of our immediate geographical view. And of course, now that we are in, everything is virtual, it seems like the world is now within our view. And we're honored tonight to have a special guest all the way from Australia, Genevieve Flynn. Genevieve Flynn is, her horror stories have been published in various markets, including Flame Tree Publishing, Things in the Well, and the Tales to Terrify podcast. Along with author and editor Lee Murray, Genevieve co-edited the very awesome Black Cranes, Tales of Unquiet Women, an anthology of Southeast Asian horror. The anthology has been listed on Tor Nightfire's Works of Feminist Horror and Locus Magazine's 2020 recommended reading list. And yay, it's a finalist for this year's Stoker Award for Best Anthology. So we're excited to have Genevieve with us. She is also on the editing team along with Aki Flinhart and Lauren Elise Daniels for Relics, Wrecks, and Ruins, a speculative fiction anthology featuring, wow, Neil Gaiman, Ken Liu, and Mary Robinette Kowal. The anthology is in support of the Flinthart Writing Residency with the Queensland Writing Center. Genevieve loves tales that unsettle, all things writerly, and B-grade action movies. So, Genevieve, what B-grade action movie is underappreciated and deserving of further consideration, in your opinion?
Oh gosh, I feel like I'm going to be pilloried for this.
No.
I love things like Blade with Wesley Snipes. I feel I grew up in a news, working at a news agency, which is kind of like a corner store in America where you can buy comics and magazines and stuff. And I was supposed to be, you know, looking after the counter and tidying up, but I spent a lot of my time digging through the comics and reading a lot of those types of things. So anything that's based on that type of stuff, I will watch. Any type of explosions and aliens and monsters and superheroes, I'm there. My husband, bless his cotton socks, he watches Jane Austen movies. Yes, I'm not sure how we got together, but yeah, those are the types of, you know, that's the type of brain junk that I will just lap up.
And the time is now for that kind of thing because there's so many wonderful adaptations out there right now.
Oh,
well,
yes.
And congratulations on Black Cranes making it to the final ballot of this year's Stoker Award. That's incredible, and that book has such momentum. What did you enjoy the most about assembling this anthology with Lee Murray?
I think just the conversations that it's opened up. You know, people are talking about the call for diverse fiction and representation and otherness. So many other discussions have come out from Black Cranes being published, and it's exciting. It's really knowing that some of our authors have said that they've actually reconnected with some people in their lives just because it's opened up some of the conversations around what it's like being a mother, what it's like being a daughter, and being an Asian woman. So that's probably the most exciting thing. And also, getting onto the awards shortlist. That was a bit of a buzz.
Well, I really enjoy, I'm excited about your anthology, and I'm really excited about the story that a lot of us have been talking about, your animal shelter story, A Pet for Life, as well as Little Worm, which Alex Pseudopod is reprinting later this year. So why don't you set up for us what you're doing with your reading tonight?
Okay, so I'm going to read Little Worm. It's about a woman called Teresa who returns home to Malaysia. It's set in Malaysia to care for her aging mother. And it explores some of the weight of expectations that are laid at the feet of Asian daughters and mothers, that we put ourselves last, and family is put so high in the priority. And sometimes there isn't room for our hopes and dreams because you just have to push that side of yourself down. And I wanted to explore kind of what happens when those hopes and dreams become monstrous. We dissociate so much from them, and then it becomes something else. And I also wanted to look at the mother-daughter dynamic. I have a background in psychology, so it's all these are all the things that I love. And it was really interesting, that moment, I think, when your parents morph into something, into kind of like real human beings. You come to a point where you learn their stories, you learn their decisions behind some of the things that they did, and they lose some of their power, but I think they also gain a lot of humanity, where you see them for who they are, and they're no longer mom or dad, that sort of thing, and you just see them, that they made mistakes, they tried. And sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. So that's kind of what I wanted to explore. And the story features a Kui Kia, which is a Chinese version of an undead child. And it's in a lot of Southeast Asian folklore. There's lots of versions of it. And it's created by very dark magic by a shaman. And there's quite a few versions of it. One of our other authors in Black Cranes, Gabriella Lee, she uses the Tianak, which is the Philippine version of it. And it's just interesting that there's a lot of these myths are present in so many different countries, and you just wonder what fears those myths and those creatures are embodying. So that's the story that I'm going to read from. So it's Little Worm. All right. Ping, ping, ping. The incessant chiming underscored the cabbie's music and the occasional blare of a horn. Teresa wondered what the hell it was as she braced herself. There were no seat belts in the back of the taxi. Hopefully, wedging herself tight between her luggage would work just as well. The taxi casually swerved within inches of a looming truck. Teresa's foot jammed down on an invisible brake pedal. Christ, careful! The Malay cabbie twisted in his seat. Ah? A grin split his face, showing teeth stained yellow with tobacco. Brake lights flashed in front. Watch out, Teresa squeaked. The little man spun with what seemed like infinite slowness. Chibai! The cab screeched to a smoking halt. The theory of the luggage wedge didn't hold out. And by the time Teresa staggered out of the taxi at the gate to her mother's house, her lip had swelled like a hot slug. The cabbie deposited her bag beside her feet and took off, trailing tinny music and fumes. Teresa plucked at her shirt, grimacing in the humidity. She looked up the street one way, then the other. Nothing but potted road and endless walls and gates, enclosing concrete courtyards and two-story concrete homes. Not a blade of grass to be seen. A bougainvillea sent canes over the side of one wall, vibrantly pink. A thin, collarless mutt lay sleeping in the shadow of another wall. Kuching, home. Bow, bow. Teresa's mother hurried across the small concrete courtyard and swung open the gate. 34 years old, and a mother still called her baby. Hey, Ma. A brief darkness clouded Chu Hua's face, tightening the skin around her mouth and eyes. Hey, Ma. Che, after all these years. She grabbed Teresa's chin, forcing her face from side to side. What happened? Did that Darren hit you? I knew he was no good. No, Ma. The taxi driver had to brake suddenly. Those Bangalis, hopeless. He wasn't Indian, he was Malay. Teresa gently pulled away and picked up her bag, stifling a sigh. Even without the 10-hour flight from Brisbane, this visit was going to be exhausting. From the moment Freddie had called, the old weight she had thought to cast off had settled back onto her shoulders. Ma's not right. As usual, her brother didn't bother with niceties. No, how's business going? No, have you found a Chinese boyfriend yet? In a way, Teresa was glad. The news was bad enough. What do you mean? Teresa asked. Auntie Shihong called me and said Ma's been acting weirdly. The neighbors say she prowls around at night. Prowls? What do you mean prowls? The ladies at her church meetings haven't seen her in a month, and Auntie Shihong says she's not eating. As her mother led the way into the dark, air-conditioned cool of the house, Teresa could see that Auntie Shihong was right. Chu Hua had always prided herself on her daintiness, exclaiming to anyone who would listen that it was a wonder she could have given birth to such a solidly built daughter. But what had been an enviable fineness had now become frailty. Even in the dim light, the sharp ridges of her mother's shoulder blades visibly tinted the back of her silk dress. How are you, Ma? Chu Hua waved her hand and detoured into the kitchen. Fine, fine. The sweet green smell of tea drifted from the room. Teresa followed, her stomach tightening. The shelves, groaning with sauces and jars of salted plums and mandarin peel, were the same. The neat stack of plastic takeaway containers still teetered in the corner. The same squat rice cooker took center stage on the counter. How is that thing still going? Teresa pulled up a stool and sat at the mottled jade laminated counter. Chu Hua bustled around and poured them both a serve of tea in tiny cups and pushed the plate of almond biscuits forward. Eat, I made these this morning. Eat while they're fresh. Out of habit, Teresa picked one up. Freddie called. He's worried about you. Chu Hua's wide smile revealed a flash of her former beauty. Freddie is such a good boy. He always thinks of me. And yet I'm the one who's sitting in this kitchen. Is everything okay? You look like you've lost weight. Her mother's mouth pursed. Something you should consider. Teresa put the uneaten biscuit back. She folded her hands into her lap, looked down and took a deep breath. Look, Ma. Bao? Chu Hua stared over Teresa's shoulder, the corners of her coral lips trembling wetly. Where are you? She snatched up the plate and shuffled off towards the hallway. Bao? Her voice wavered on the edge of tears. I'm here, Ma. Teresa trailed her mother. Chu Hua disappeared into the sewing room. She hastily put the plate down. It teetered on the edge of the deeply polished Singer sewing table. Chu Hua frantically dug around in the bags of scraps and bolts of material in the corner. Teresa pushed the plate in and bent closer to the machine, frowning. The snarl of thread and material was bunched under the sewing machine's presser foot. Several needles had been snapped off and bristled from the mess. The skin on Teresa's arms chilled and her heart shrank just a little. Please, don't let it be dementia. Of course, it could be any number of things. Any one would mean Teresa would have to abandon her carefully constructed life 6,000 kilometers away. Pieces of cloth flew in the air behind HWA. Bao, where are you? Come out at once. Teresa put her hands on her mother's shoulders, wincing at how bird-like she felt, and gently pulled her away from the bags. Ma, stop, I'm here. She steered her out of the room. She would tidy up the mess after she got her mother to lie down. Then she'd call Dr. Lee. I'm here, Ma, Bao Bao's here. HWA twisted and sneered. You stupid worm, why would I look for you? As swiftly as the ugly expression had appeared, it vanished, like a turtle disappearing back below the surface of a pond. Teresa sucked in a breath and took her mother's bony elbow with the gentlest hand because she wanted so much to slap her. HWA patted her hair and allowed herself to be led, shuffling like a woman of 90.
Wow, that is such a powerful story.
Thank
That's really
you.
amazing. So beautiful. And one of the things I just love about tonight's lineup and your story is this idea that these stories are grounded so much in real people's experiences. And I know as someone who has parents who are getting older, these are concerns, and you really tap into it. It's just beautiful. Can you talk a little bit about the inspiration for this story? I know that a lot of writers don't like, where'd you get your ideas from? But this is such a beautiful story.
Oh, thank you. It is, I think, something that a lot of us are dealing with at the moment. And it was something that I had struggled with, just thinking my folks are getting older too. And just wondering, now I've got two brothers, but a lot of the expectation fell onto me to be the one to sort out what was happening with my folks. And that was really difficult. And there's a whole lot of guilt around that because you feel like, well, it's almost, just something that you feel like it's expected and you should do it, and your folks have done so much for you. But then I'm also at the point in my writing and my editing where I'm really hitting my stride and having to put all of that aside to become carer for one of my parents. I mean, that it was such a hard decision to make, and it felt really alien to say, no, this is something that is important to me, and I'm going to pursue my writing, I'm going to pursue my editing. So yeah, it is personal, and it does feel uncomfortable talking about it, just because I think just women in particular, we are, we have that weight of expectation of, what we're supposed to want, what we're supposed to put first. Yeah. So, and of course, I went digging for Asian folklore, and I found this little creature, and I thought, oh, this is it. I have to use it.
Oh, wow. It's that personal connection, that grounding. And I know sometimes these things can be difficult to talk about. So really appreciate you opening up there with your own personal story behind this. I mean, it's definitely, it's powerful. It feels really real.
Yeah. And so many of the stories in Black Cranes, our contributors dug really deep and just exposed so much of themselves. So I think that's why the collection is so powerful. Sorry, you go.
It, like I said before, it's getting such a momentum and a very well-deserved attention.
Thank you. Thank you.
And so I have to ask, with this writing this crest of success right now, what is next for you?
I do have a couple of stories that I've been tossing around. The one that keeps popping up is that I wanted to write about Qing Shi, who is one of the most successful pirates ever. But she's, I mean, I think she commanded at the height of her power something like 40 to 60,000 pirates. And Blackbeard, who we know so much more about, I think he had 300, something like that. And even her name, that isn't her real name. She is the title is wife of Qing. Qing Shi means wife of Qing. So she doesn't even own her own name.
Wow.
Yeah, so I thought I want to write that story, and I want to know how she's supposed to have been started out as a courtesan, you know, and on this floating junk, and she was, you know, selected, and she became the wife of a pirate, and then she became so powerful. There's even part of the research says that she even negotiated, that the Chinese government were trying to bring all the piracy under control, and she negotiated for her and her pirates to be allowed to be pardoned and to keep all of her treasure. So, and you know, she was such a menace that they agreed, and so she retired, I think at the age of she died at the age of 69, and you know, surrounded with all her wealth. So I think, how do you manage that? And I really wanted to explore her story.
Well, in exploring this story, Genevieve, are you looking at condensing this into a short story or a series of short stories? Are you looking at a novel? What are you thinking about with this? It's such a big topic.
I know. I do love short stories. I love the short story format. And I do have some imagery of scenes that I want to play out. And I wanted to play with that thing where, you know, seahorses, the males are the ones that are pregnant. The males are the ones that carry all the little baby seahorses, and the female just, you know, disappears after she's had her fun. So I thought something to do with that, and also Nadia Bulkin's story in Black Cranes, yeah, where she plays with a lot of that, you know, the creatures from the sea, and that you know, playing with that, you know, things that originate from the old gods and the monsters. And I thought, somehow it's all gonna just come together. Just like Nova was saying, you have this idea and you have this idea. It's like, I'm gonna jam them together and something's gonna work. So that's it. Seahorses and Qing Shi, the pirate.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, you had me at both female pirates and now seahorses. But Genevieve, thank you so much for joining us all the way from Australia over here to Atlanta. And it's just been an amazing night. Good luck with further success, particularly with Black Cranes. We'll be pulling for you.
Thank you so much.
And it's exciting. Your collection's really exciting. Well, that brings us to the end of our event this evening. Thanks to Genevieve and the rest of our guests. The Southern Nightmares reading series is a monthly online series presented by the HWA of Atlanta. And we spotlight every month horror writer members from the Atlanta chapter, as well as guests from around the world. So check out past events on YouTube and subscribe to our YouTube channel and keep in touch for future events. Please join us again on the evening of March 25th for another reading series. Until then, honor Halloween in your heart and try to keep it all year long. See you next month, y'all.